Welcome to Ek Samvaad at Arunima Ankuran. We are celebrating National Engineers Day, and it's a privilege to have one of the brightest engineers in the country as our guest today, creating solutions for the society using technology and science. Our guest today is Nikhil Kurele, co-founder and CEO, Nokak, IIT Kanpur, Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia. He has an absolutely illustrious CV already. So, welcome to Ek Samvaad, Nikhil.
Thank you, ma'am.
A word about Arunima Ankuran. It is an initiative for positive social change through self-development. The goal is greater well-being and happiness for all. At Arunima Ankuran, we believe that each person is unique and special in some way, and we appreciate that difference, and that's what keeps us going. So, Engineers Day is celebrated on September 15th every year since 1968 to mark the birth anniversary of the engineering pioneer of the country, Sir Mokshagundam Vishveshwaraya. He said an engineer is a person who applies the skills and knowledge of basic science for the good of society. So I'm truly thrilled to have Nikhil here today because he epitomizes the entire thing that has just been said about Engineers Day. So he's an alumni of IIT Kanpur. He's pursued his BTech degree, specializing in mechanical engineering. He's the CEO of a leading startup, a co-founder and CEO in clean tech and healthcare industry. He has been featured in the prestigious Forbes 30 Under 30 Asia 2020. He has a keen interest in ground robotics and machine design. Other than academics, Science and Technology Council, SAE, IIT Kanpur, IIT Motorsports, Robotics Club, Dramatics Club, Music Club. So I don't think there's anything we really missed out, Nikhil. Yeah? The engineer's first problem in any design situation is to discover what the problem really is. So here's where we'll start off from, Nikhil. You can see this picture. I'm sure you've probably seen it before.
Yes.
So talk to us about, how did you decide that you want to be one of the problem solvers in this situation?
So it actually I would say it was not the first problem which we actually began solving. So if we see, it goes back to so I was always interested in engineering, and engineering was something which I actually wanted to do. So it was always, and I was fortunately I had a clarity even during my school days that I would either be a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer or maybe civil somewhere, because I used to see things constructing, and I used to love them because the kind of evolution which I have seen, when I used to spend my time in my village, I've seen a lot of things happening in the 3 months period, right? So what happens actually, I've seen technologies which are even 50 years old, and the same kind of technology which are right now in the market. So that in the evolution of those engineering designs, that interests me a lot. So I started solving problems, honestly speaking, when I was in school. I was not actually very good in academics, but I used to love electronics and mechanical and assembling things. So the first thing which I did was made a small fan using all the recycling materials when I was in school, because we used to have power cut, and that was the time actually things started in my family. People used to know that knew that I'm into making stuffs and watching Discovery channels in terms of where actually I get knowledge of what actually goes into building a big machinery. And I even used to go and watch the construction sites. I used to go and watch the repair shops, because that is where you get to see the real engineering, right? So from there, then when I entered in IIT Kanpur, it gave me a platform to experiment all those things. So IIT Kanpur with SAE Club and Robotics Club, we used to solve certain problem statements. One thing which we actually changed, when we did our internship, I wasn't working with Tata GTO, and Harshit, my co-founder, who was working with Tata Motors in Pune, and I was in Bangalore. We realized that in India there are a lot of products which are required in good quantities, but none of those products are being made in India. And that is where we started reading more about it, and that is where we identified. The reason I am stretching this answer is because it has a reason to it.
Good.
So what happens, like when we read about it, when we researched more about it, we got to know that in principle, India skipped the complete industrial era, like kind of a thing, wherein like the majority part of innovating and getting the solutions developed in-house and scaling them, that has been skipped. So that culture has never been inculcated in students, neither in our academics. We have been we get a lot of learnings in IITs and all these premium colleges, and even every colleges have the curriculum. The problem is, like, we are taught technologies which are basic, which are definitely required, but our curriculum is more towards making people in an academic direction. So a person studying in IIT definitely can be a really good like a professor or a researcher, definitely can be a good engineer as well. But I think some part which is missing is the industrial part, the actual science which is going in the real life. So that is where we started identifying problems. So Harshit and I realized that we should do something. So we started making out list of problems which India is facing, and the market size is huge, and which where we should enter, so that at least we have some potential in the market, because we wanted to solve a problem, but at the same time it should have a business sense to it. Otherwise, the sustainability becomes a question. So we listed out problems. We developed first solar panel cleaning robot of in India, and that was commercialized, and we sold it to one of the leading. Actually, not just one of the leading; it was actually the leading solar plant developers. So that happened, and then like we shifted to Pune after raising an investment from IN fund. That was the first problem which we were solving at a commercial level, where people were ready to pay us. Then second thing which actually came up was the COVID-19, because our business was completely operation driven. What happened? We had nothing to do because we were not allowed to operate, being non-essential service. At the same time, the travel restrictions were there, and most of our robots are installed in remote locations where we had to travel. We could not even place our engineers there because that would have been a very riskier thing for our teammates. So it was more, there were 3-4 things which actually made us do this ventilator project. One was we had nothing to do. So we had to do something that was there. Second point, if we see, like the country actually needed the ventilators, and we felt really bad looking at the situation that most of the countries on whom we were dependent on in terms of these devices have actually denied supplying those ventilators. So that was actually a bad feeling in itself. In second wave, this came for the vaccine. We actually felt really bad that we have our best engineers working for these companies, but still we do not have the vaccines and all. So actually, in the first wave, we realized that we should do something. And we had expertise in the robotics and automation systems and control systems. So we decided that we'll make something. Third thing was, we always wanted to do something which actually is a long-term thing. We never, we had an option. So when we listed out the problem statements, mask was one of the problems, PPE kit was one of the problems, sanitizer, and like ventilator. And to be honest, ventilator was one of the toughest problems. In terms of designing and coming up with the project. The reason why we took it up, because we thought that if let's say COVID goes away, what are we trying to do? Are we just trying to play in the short term, just helping the country? Definitely that was one of the key factors, that we need to help the country right now. But what after that? Because we have to sustain, we have to build team, we have to grow. So that is where we decided ventilator, and that was one of the best problems, honestly, I would say, I have solved so far. And so it all started from schooling, and I think till now we are trying to do this. Now for us, the problem solving, we have changed, the perspective has changed. Now more than problem solving, what I identify is there is two parts to any problem. One is the functional part, one is the value part. If let's, to give you more context of this particular thing, I'm selling a ventilator, someone is paying me for the ventilator, that's the only transaction which we are doing against the money, right? But when I'm talking about the value, let's say I get a service call and I explain them that this is the XYZ things which you need to do on the ventilator, and you will get your problems resolved. But when you're talking about the value, one question we also should ask ourselves is it the maximum knowledge or is it the maximum value which we have delivered to that customer? So that is where I think Indian companies are lagging. If we talk about the ecosystem, if we talk about the value to price, that is where we are trying to establish our organization. And for us, the problem statement has more to do with the value addition which we are doing to the customers or to the end user or any stakeholders in the process. So that definition has changed a little for me now.
Wow. We are so proud, the Nikhil, of the thing you're doing, And just listening to you talk about the business dimension of it. I'm really curious. You're an engineering student. How did the business knowledge and the learning come from, and where did it come from? Because doing business the way you're doing it now is not something you were academically trained for. So, talk to us about that.
So, ma'am, in this aspect, I would say like IIT Kanpur helped us a lot. We being part of the SIIC Incubation Center, which is of IIT Kanpur, we get to interact with a lot of mentors. And fortunately, through SIIC, we have got our two mentors who have been guiding us throughout the journey of Nokak. So, Dr. Saurabh Srivastava, who is a Padma Shri awardee, he is an alumnus of IIT Kanpur. He is one of the co-founders of NASCOM. And one of our alumni, Mr. Neil Bhaskar, who is based in USA, he is one of the successful entrepreneurs, and he was even the entrepreneur of USA in year 2000 by Ernst and Young. So you can imagine the kind of achievements they have had in their life and this similar journey. So these things which are missing in our life and academically, definitely we try and read out certain things. And fortunately, coming from IIT Kanpur background, we get access to a lot of IIT Kanpur alum, and not just IIT Kanpur, but various other IIT alums who are already in similar fields. So we get to learn a lot from them. So whenever we face any problem, we always tend to discuss that. And most of the one thing which we have realized at the end of the day, the problem has a solution, right? Either you'll switch the direction or you'll conclude that this is the solution which I want to take. And it's the approach which needs to be developed. So it's not about the problem. I have seen, if we talk about the world's best artists, there have been people who have been good engineers, at the same time good painters, and at the same time like musician and all those things. So I think it's more about the approach of solving the problem or approaching the issue or the problem statement rather than just the expertise of the subject. So I think that is what we are trying to learn from people in our network. And I'm also learning from people who are in our organization. Although I don't have much experience, I graduated in 2016, but we have people in our organizations who are more experienced than us. So we also get to learn from them as well.
Wonderful. Okay, so Nikhil, also, it's very important for us to know where you came from, how your journey was, and this idea. I'm sure you understand it. हमारे देश में जो parents हैं, they sort of fix destinations for their children. तुमको IIT में जाना है, and then they push them and they push them no end. Tell us about how your experience was, so that children can listen in and so can parents.
Honestly, ma'am, I think like I came out from my hometown. So I'll tell you, my hometown is Shahdol. So that's a place, that's a small town, district in Madhya Pradesh, which is near Jabalpur. I used to spend 9 months in Shahdol, and then I used to spend remaining time, and not 9 months, honestly, around 8 months, and around 4 months in my village, which is 60 kilometers from there. So we have farming. What actually like happened? My father and mother, both of them were actually very inclined towards education. My father himself at that point of time, he did masters twice, both in economics and history. So he was very well, like he was very excited about education. So for us, one thing was very clear, that you have to take something up and you have to like do something good in education. We are not setting any benchmarks in terms of how much you want to earn or how much you should earn at this point of time, or what you should do. The only thing they wanted was like to at least take education seriously, so that you can decide what exactly is your interest area. that was always the pressure. I would say yes, it was the pressure because I wanted to play at that point of time, because so it became pressure
Okay,
automatically.
okay.
One thing which actually helped me a lot, I used to be in my village, and I have even seen power cuts for consecutive 30-35 days. So we had nothing to do but to play with things around us. We didn't have television. I used to see my tractors getting repaired. I used to go to like rivers and used to see how. So there are one thing which I have seen, like in my journey, various things have played role. When I was staying in a schedule, so there's a, electronic shop, electronic repair shop, where they used to repair audio systems and television. So I used to get some child parts from them, the faulty parts from them. So even they played a role in my education. I still go and meet them. So it actually feels that yes, it's an ecosystem. What I feel is, in India, especially having so much middle class family around, people have large expectations from them and aspirations. And that is what actually drives people. For me, there are a lot of things which I used to see in television and I used to dream of ki kabhi mere paas ye hoga. So it actually is a driving factor. So I think what parents, I'm not very experienced honestly to comment anything on a concrete basis, but based on my limited learning, can be completely wrong. But what I feel is, nowadays education actually was always important, but right now it is very important, because the kind of opportunities people are getting are very high tech. If you want to sustain, the gaps are the gaps are increasing. So education will play a very important role. We used to see that people with a like certain lower level of education qualification, when I say lower level, I mean certain maybe up to 10th or 12th class qualified person was also able to get certain things done. Now I think that is increasing, because the kind of the number of graduates are increasing a lot. So I think one thing is that education has to be taken seriously, that is for sure. And that is the only easiest thing which anyone can do. I have realized while I went to IIT, because actually education opens a lot of things for you. You have a mindset, you have an option of getting into so many things. Apart from that, one thing which I feel what parents should do, and also not just parents, anyone who is guiding any student, they should always try and see what actually what I have learned from my mentors, that they never used to tell me what is right or wrong. They always used to give me a
Yes.
direction that this can this happen. So instead of forcing anyone to get certain things done, ask certain questions to them based on your experience as a mentor or as a guide, to help them evaluate their choices better, instead of giving them the answer to the choices, because no one has that answer. Even you cannot guess things for me, I cannot guess things for someone else. Like they cannot guess anything for, and neither parents can do that,
Yes.
because I was never very close to my parents at least till 12th, so that I can share everything. So that will only be the suggestion, that instead of giving the exact answer to their problem, try and help them to identify the answer based on the experience. This is what I would say based on my limited experience.
Yeah. So, Nikhil, how were you preparing for IIT? I mean, did you have that? What kind of preparation did you do?
I actually went to Kota. Like my sister is a doctor, so she was already there in Kota. She's 4 years older to me, and so she was in Kota, and then like she was taking coaching for MBBS, and then she realized that yes, there's a huge possibility if person comes to this place and gets coached for like IIT examination. So I took a coaching. Unfortunately, I didn't clear that in my 12th, and then I took a drop again, went to Kota, and then I like prepared. So it helped a lot. The Kota thing helped me a lot. It was all about direction now. So
Yeah.
they helped with the right directions.
Okay. So, Nikhil, there is something like deep work. For example, I was just reading up on how you went around with the ventilator project. So it requires concerted effort without any distraction. And so, can you just talk to us about the process of exactly, how it happened?
Sure, ma'am. So, like what we did was like when we decided that there's nothing which we can do about solar business, we have to do something. So we started reading about the problems. Once we finalized the ventilator, what we did, we started reading about the research papers. So it was 23rd of March when we actually started reading about ventilator. On 23rd of March around 9 p.m. we decided we actually made a pizza in our home. And while making pizza, we decided that we let us venture into ventilators. So what we did, we started reading about the research paper. One thing which was there that this area is huge. We were four of them, four of us. So what we did, we divided different the complete project, because at the end of the day, project will have one theory part, one will be the electronics part. If we are talking about a hardware, one will be the mechanical part, and the fourth will be what is happening in the current industry. So we divided all those things. We had trust in each of us, like that. इसने अगर ये चीज पढ़ ली है तो इसको we can take that for sure कि हाँ ये सही है. So that confidence was there. So that team definitely played a role. Then after that, what we did, once we had a clear picture, we actually none of us ever saw a ventilator before even we made it.
Wow.
So
This is
so
really
that so we never saw a ventilator. So what happened once we read it, we all together of like we decided that we'll not make a ventilator. The reason is that because the kind of precision which is required in the ventilator is so high, and we couldn't afford to take a risk of having a person intubated in our ventilator, and if something goes wrong, that was definitely a risk which was there. So we decided and we communicated to our mentors that we'll not make a invasive ventilator. We can make a non-invasive ventilator where you just have to put a mask, because that has a very less criticality.
right.
What happened when we started reading about it further, when we started reading about it, all of us concluded that it's a basic science at the end of the day. If you talk about any device, it's a basic science. For a ventilator, it's basically a machine which is supplying air at a certain volume and a pressure. And we actually used the principles and the learnings which we used to read and learn during our IIT preparation. So measuring the pressure, because when we got a sensor from the drone when we were making a proof of concept, not a ventilator which needs to be put on patient, but a proof of concept which needs to be tested on an artificial lung. We got a pressure sensor from a drone, because they also use the similar kind of a pressure sensor. But we wanted to test what exactly is that limit. Let's say sensor is supplying us a value, some X value. What is that X value corresponding to? How much pressure? And that has to be calibrated. We searched for so many devices, but at the end of the day, we realized that it can only be done with the basic principle of having a water column. So that is being taught in 11th, 12th. So when we all like implemented all those basic science, and that is where we realized, so we ourselves learned a lot like in the process. And so the thing which we have learned, any product, any problem statement, it needs to be broken into elementary science, what exactly it is. The peripherals can happen. The peripherals are something which is already done in the world. It's only the basic science. If you are talking about the X-ray machine, you have to consider what actually the X-ray will do. Taking a data from that device, displaying that, it is also already happening in so many machines, and that data is available. So for ventilator, we broke that problem in elementary problem of what actually it is, and then we read a lot of books. We have gone through, and that was the only time we actually like read so many books. We never did even during IIT time. So that was pretty much the process, ma'am. So, and always one thing which we had with us, if anything we are doing, if anything is uncertain, we always used to discuss about the next steps, so that if that particular experiment fails, because in a R&D you always have a probability of something getting failed. So because the time was very less, and it was not just launching the ventilator, it was also the survival of the organization, because we already invested our money which was left with us, and that to at an accelerated rate we were like expending that money. So what we did, we had two people like in our team who were working on the current technology, and two people always used to work on the technology. Let's say if that fails, let us start working on that thing right now, so that we don't have to start it then.
Okay.
Otherwise, that delta will be added. So all those things we did, and it was also possible because the team was very small. and everyone was aligned because the vision was very clear. And that is very tough for a team. They have a right vision and deadlines.
Right.
I think external factors were also pushing us. It was not just our it. I would not. I'll not say that we are the most efficient or like we were the most efficient team which was doing it. We were actually surrounded by so many factors that made us do that.
And see, when you're collaborating with four, I mean, four people are collaborating, so there will be disagreements and that human element will come in. So, did that happen? And how were you
Yes.
dealing with that?
So as a co-founder and CEO, my role was to always have a team at the same level. So one thing which we always used to do is we used to write things. It was never a discussion in air. One
Hmm.
of our mentors always used to say anything which is in air is as good as nothing. So you have to write it down. So 90% of the problems or 90% of the things get solved when you write it down, because
Hmm.
then you don't have mathematics cannot be defended. Like it cannot be questioned, because if 10 is greater than 8, no one can argue on that, right? So ma'am, so we used to write all those things. What is the pros? What is the cons? And for any subjective thing, what we used to do on the best judgment. We fortunately had a really good bonding in the team, and we still have it right now. Even the team size has increased to 5x. We still have that. So we always used to take the final call after getting a feedback from the expert in our team. So
Hmm.
whoever has the maximum experience in that area used to take the final call on that.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you have to convince the other person. That was the only thing. And we used to even have discussions till 5 in the morning, that this is what I feel. And let's say someone says that this is what I feel. So we have to, like, there was a rule that you have to convince. At the end of the day, if we are progressing on certain thing, everyone has to be on the same page. Otherwise, people will not be working on that.
Sure, that's absolutely true. So, Nikhil, from your own academic experience and now your experience as a problem solver and as a co-founder and CEO and so many other things, what are the three or four skills that a new age engineer should focus on developing?
One thing, ma'am, which I feel is the coding which people talk about a lot should be kept aside. That is what I feel. The coding is something which is very, very restricted. It's very focused in a very short domain. Coding is not the solution to the problems which we are facing right now. The solution is mathematics and physics. The basic principles, why things happen. Coding is the method of communicating or writing things down. So the one thing uh, like which I would feel people should focus more on mathematics and basic mathematics and elementary science. So the concepts are clear. Things should be linked. I should be able to identify why this and why this, why not this. The good coder cannot, not necessarily, definitely a good coder can be a good in mathematics and physics as well. But uh, like considering that if person knows a coding, it's not necessarily that he'll be aware of the technology which is happening at a root level. So that is where I would suggest, like every, even in my IIT Kanpur, like one of the sessions I also tried and communicated this, that instead of focusing on coding, focus on basic science and basic how they evolve. And the second thing which I personally love a lot, the evolution of any technology. For you, definitely you must have seen the computers coming in front of you, and now you are actually very well versed with computers, right? That actually we take it for granted, but if we see the evolution, how things have evolved, that
Yes.
itself is a very great learning, I would say. Because if you see about an automobile, having an automobile in a town was itself a very, very big thing, like a Maruti 800 car, right? But because the economics, the cost of economics, the unit economics and other things, so if you evolve all those things, then you get attached more to the real life engineering,
Yes.
because that's how the real life engineering grows. So that is one thing. And third, ma'am, I would say, like, honestly, what I feel is always try and see the best value if it can be added. So what we used to practice, and I used like and preach in this statement in our organization, that you can only sell anything to others if you can sell that to yourself. Because if I am not convinced, so if I am not convinced with my product, I'll not be able to defend each and everything on that. If any question comes up on that product. So one thing is communicating the truth is the most easiest part. So like instead of framing things, like we always try and see that if you are doing right to the product, if you are actually adding value, no one can even take that market from you. That is what at least we have learned. So we are focusing a lot on value addition, and it happens. I think it happens in all stages of life. So maybe we were fortunate to be in this situation so that we have learned a lot. Otherwise, I think I would say I'm also not very experienced.
No, fortune favors the brave, right?
Maybe yes. Yes, ma'am.
So, Nikhil, it's making me feel so proud that at your age and you're still growing, you have your fundamentals really clearly laid out for you. I'm sure there has been some, sort of sitting back and thinking about what are the core values I'm not going to compromise. All of us have those,
Yes, ma'am.
these non-negotiables, what we can call. So, what
Yes.
are those for Nikhil?
So, ma'am, for that is like for me, one thing is transparency, and the second thing is the trust, and like what we are practicing, because my 90% of time goes in my organization. Like, so I am mentally, even if I'm joining office at 11 or leaving at 11, even from the time I wake up, most of the time things are there in the mind. So I'm almost indulged in the company. So I would say for me, all the values which I'm practicing myself or the company, both are mostly same, because that's how I want to see the company. So in company, there are three things which we are trying to practice and which are completely non-negotiable. One is transparency. The reason why we want to be very transparent, because if like what happens, I've seen this happening in the second wave of COVID. There have been companies who have tried and increased the price and other things. And see, increasing price is not a challenge, not a wrong thing, because definitely the industry is struggling. The costs have increased, but being transparent to the customer, it also follows with the same thing, that truth is the easiest way to come, like
Yes.
easiest thing to communicate. So being transparent always comes with its own perks, and it also teaches it also brings more professionalism in the organization, because then people don't take things otherwise. So transparency is something, because we and how we practice it, none of our managers are like we have asked every managers that none of them will force anything on any employee. Everything has to be discussed, everyone has to be on the same page, and then only they will proceed, so that people can realize that yes, this is the reason why I'm doing this job. They're not the people who are just doing job on an hourly basis. There has to be a purpose in life, there has to be a purpose in work. So that transparency helps us do that. Second part is trust. When I say trust, the reason why it is very important and it is very non-negotiable, I there are two three different reasons why trust is very important. One is, in a team, if you don't have trust, you'll always be double banging on certain things. You will not be running at your full efficiency, because if I can't trust someone else work, I'll be checking that work and I'll be spending some time on that and getting things done. And if I don't trust him, I am not allowing him to experiment and give his full potential, because even at this point of time, we are making mistakes, and even probably like 10 years down the line also we will make certain mistakes, because things will be new for us. If we can mistake, why can't others get mistake? So in our organization, if we allow the trust part, even people make mistake, they know that the managers trust me, the management trust me, or the co-founders trust me. So they will try and give their maximum potential. They will not be hesitating कि अगर मेरे से कल को गलती हो जाती है तो मेरे पे भरोसा नहीं किया जाएगा कि मैंने सही किया था.
Right.
And third thing which we are trying to practice in our organization is the intent. So if the person has an intent to do something good, it may be the case that person A and person B solving the same problem would be achieving, let's say A achieves the 70% or B achieves the 50% of that target, if we do the mathematical calculation or do the milestoning. But what was for sure, that both of them will be moving in the same direction, and that is very important to have someone in the same direction, because it is very important for a company, for an organization. You have to have an organized way, and to make things organized, you have to have a direction so that people are aligned. Ki, haan, ye karna hai, chalo ye karna hai. So it's not like a lot of people are there and solving different problems, but those are not aligning. एक करके बैठ जाएगा, दूसरे को उसकी डिपेंडेंसी होगी. All those problems come up. So with the intent, we solve this problem कि हम एक ही direction में बढ़ रहे हैं. If the person intent is right, for sure he'll do the right thing. And it can be evolved, like the efficiencies can be evolved, but at least the person is moving in the right direction. So intent, trust, I would say, and transparency. And transparency not just internally but also externally with our customers and stakeholders.
So for someone who's looking to join you, they can hear this. And
that would be really great. And we are actually increasing our team size at a very fast rate. So like we have almost increased the team size to like 5x in last 1 year.
Wow. So that's
and we are looking to taking it 2x. Like right now we are around 130. We'll be like around 250 in next 1 year, I would say, not 1.5 years.
So this is new India, you know. It's such a happy feeling, you know, that people like you exist in this country now. So
I think, ma'am, it's more than us. Like it's what we are doing is nothing compared to what others are doing. So I think there are a lot of examples, I would say.
Yes,
Even
yes.
I get motivated from a lot of things. So what people are doing is such an amazing thing, and we are just doing a very small fraction of what they are doing.
So tell me about the people who inspire you.
The biggest inspiration for me, honestly, is like in terms of this business, I would say on the transparency and the values part, my parents, definitely. And not because everyone has to say their parents, because I have legit reasons for that. Because they always insisted. And the first thing when I cracked JE and when I got my rank, one thing my father said to me, and I still remember that, and that was also taught in IIT Kanpur, that he told me that although your rank is XYZ, just remember that there are XYZ minus 1 people above you. So you don't have to be like like take that thing and practice everything around that. So there are certain values. So I get inspiration, a lot of inspiration in terms of transparency and values from them. On the business and the purpose side, that what needs to be done, I would say Neil Bhaskar sir and Dr. Saurabh Srivastava. So like every time I talk about them, there's a smile which comes to my face. So they're a huge inspiration for me. And in terms of knowledge, if you ask me, like I have a lot of batchmates, and I've not seen talented people like them. So what they are doing is something which I can't even dream of in terms of technology and other things. They're the best brains I have seen around me. So many inspirations around me. So many inspirations.
So Nikhil, when you were just talking earlier, you know, you said it's okay to fail, and this also reflects a growth mindset. You know, the psychologists call it the growth mindset. You may be familiar with this. So tell me, is there a particular point of time in your life when you failed and it was an enriching experience? Talk to us about that.
Honestly speaking, ma'am, like I used to think, like since my 10th class, I don't have any incident where I feel that I have failed, because there is second thing which has always come up.
Yes.
So, and also one thing which we realize while developing the ventilator, failure is only when we accept it. Otherwise, you always have a solution, to be honest. And this is not the words which I'm trying to face, but this is actually what we have feel. So because there was some specification which were required in a ventilator, we didn't have that. When we went, we got rejected. We had a timeline of 12 days and we had to do it anyhow. Things which we didn't do in last 2 months, we had to do it in 12 days. We did it. So I think it's all about identifying the right problem. Because I think the reason why we say failure, I think is a very subjective and a very broad word. The reason why people say things as a failure, because I think people don't talk about the journey. They always talk about the vision and the aspiration. You can't, because that can never be achieved. It's vision and inspiration. Even as Saurabh sir and Neil sir, they always say that they are still learning. And if they have achieved everything, why would they learn? So I think the reason why we have a concept of failure is because there's a people always talk about the end thing. They don't talk about the learning and the achievements in the process.
Hmm.
So I think that is very for me. If you ask me, like as a failure, like just a failure which people consider as a failure, I would say my JEE like examination, 12th examination when I didn't got the rank. So I didn't get the rank, so I had to prepare for JEE again. But I think that was there for hardly 1.5 or 2 weeks. But I was certain that अभी नहीं तो अभी ये करना है, otherwise नहीं तो इसके साथ ही रोते रह जाएंगे.
So it's important, Nikhil. The reason I'm asking you this question is because what is happening to a lot of youngsters is they have this fixed goal, a specific destination, nahi hua, and then that leaves them completely disheartened. So the whole idea that you just said, it's such a beautiful thing. It's a journey, and there's nothing like failure. Hai to this is the dead end. There is always something new, and you can keep, moving on from there.
So instead of asking the same question, ma'am, also a failure, we should also ask what is the success. We should ask who is successful, because I have not seen any person who is successful and who is not doing anything. Because success and failure is both, these two things are both subjective. Like we can have milestones that can be measurable, but these words failure and success are purely a subjective thing which cannot be measured.
That's true.
A person who has been struggling for a gold medal like maybe 4 times, maybe right now they have got the gold medal, we can't say that he failed earlier.
Yes.
If we see that picture, that can be a failure, right? If it just depends on what time period you are talking about, what time frame we are talking about. So I think not just failure, it's also about the success. There's nothing called success. It's more about a purpose and a happiness, I would say. It's not about success.
Oh, this is so amazing. I really like your thought process. Wonderful. No wonder you're doing so great. Nikhil, you are also a musician. I'm curious to know what it is.
So I try and play like percussion. So that is where, because I'm not a musician, to be honest. It's just that in college we got certain opportunities, and in school also I used to play drums a little bit. I'm not at all expert in that.
Okay, you listen to music, but you
Yes,
follow.
I listen to music.
Okay, so yeah.
Please go ahead now.
How would Nikhil describe himself?
I'm just trying to find like the right purpose and the reason to be happy. Like honestly, like I think I'm just trying. If you ask me to define myself, there can be few things like I'm an engineer, graduate from IIT Kanpur, currently leading the company. But there are multiple things which are like I'm just doing what like right now is best in my position. I'm a person who is trying to just learn things to make things easy for the future. I've learned few things really which I would like to share with you, like for students, maybe if it is beneficial. The one thing which my mentors have taught me, like it's always the tough problems which makes us strong. So like identifying the right tough problem and solving them is very important. So that is what I'm trying to learn. And I've seen so many people. Fortunately, I've got a chance to interact with so many successful. We can say it's successful, but yes, I consider them as one of the successful entrepreneurs and businessmen in India. I think the benchmark people have set for any human being. Like we no one can say कि मैं अभी best हूँ दुनिया में. So I think there's a lot to do. Right?
Your ventilators have helped so many different people. तो ऐसा कभी हुआ कि face to face you actually experienced the thing happening with you?
Yes, we have had, especially in second wave, when there was a guy who called me up. My number was there in the internet, so he called me up. His mother was actually admitted and he needed a ventilator. We provided him. We didn't charge him any money. We provided the ventilator. Only thing we had to do, take care was that the ventilator needs to be used in a hospital under the supervision of a doctor. So that was one thing which we made sure. And similar case happened with one of one student from one of the colleges in Bangalore. He actually called our toll-free number, and he unfortunately lost his father in COVID, and his mother was also admitted. And he was actually trying to buy a ventilator because ventilators were not available. But when we talked to him, one of our team members, even I didn't knew about that until he posted that out in LinkedIn, that complete narration of that complete story. So we helped him with the ventilator. We didn't charge him, because at the end of the day, ma'am, we're not here to make money, because money is not something which is the reason why our team is here. Definitely, like, people need money for certain other things, like salary has to be there, and good salary has to be there. It is very important, but it's not the only thing. It's not the thing which can drive the culture. So I think these small things, definitely not just us, like the person who wrote the firmware. If you ask me like what percentage of work I have done in a ventilator, I think I was more on a managerial side, and I was definitely part of the design team. But if we talk about the design, I was only there for 25-30% maximum. There are people who have invested more than 80-90% of their time in just getting the ventilator. So the person who wrote the complete code for the ventilator, the firmware, actually when he went down and saw that a person has been put on the ventilator, his life was saved. So actually it gives a really good feeling. It gives a purpose to the work which we do. Honestly, it gives us a pride, like we're not working on anything. There's a reason to it. There's something good happening to society.
Yeah. And I think that purpose is something that can, lifelong, it can keep inspiring you to contribute
Yes,
more and
yes,
more,
I think yes.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Nikhil, you are of course very busy, but what are the things you do when you just want to relax?
I have like so I'm actually very much passionate about like cars. So I try and take out like my car and go out. Maybe I drive. I love doing off-roading. So I and Harshit, we both we discuss work only. Most of the time, it gives satisfaction actually. It's just we do not want to discuss the transactional problems, but discussing the vision for the company and other things actually is also a relaxation, because it actually gives us the directions to our problems, because we always have list hundreds of problems in our hand. So discussing them, I think, and I personally like, so my batchmates have joined us. Fortunately, I've convinced them, some of my batchmates, so they have joined us recently. So they live nearby. So in weekends, we all sit together. We discuss our college stories. We play music. We just that's all. Like it's as
Wow,
simple as that it can be.
wonderful. That's beautiful. Actually, if you love what you do, Nikhil, I think it's not work in the work sense. It just grows on you, and you can just keep doing it forever.
And yes, ma'am. And I think this is also the case even with our lot of our employees. Definitely, there are people who sometimes feel कि यार अभी बहुत काम हो गया. But there are people who actually we have I can name one guy who is Nikhil Pachkor. There's a guy. He's a fresh graduate. Like he graduated. He joined as a fresher. He graduated from COEP Pune, and he always sits in office till 11, because उससे पूछते हैं हम जब कि आपको कर भाई तू घर क्यों नहीं जा रहा है, always he answers कि मैं घर जाके क्या करूंगा. So we always force him to take leaves. We always force him कि भाई तू अभी chill मार, अभी थोड़ा relax कर. We don't want him to like burn out, like. So
Yeah.
there are people who take pride in their work and actually give so much to this organization.
So, Nikhil, before we conclude this conversation, is there a message for students, engineering students?
Engineering students, I would, the only message I would say, ma'am, that based on my limited experience, I feel uh, that there's a huge opportunity in this country. When I say huge opportunity, it is backed by numbers. We are one of the largest population. So by default, if we see the kind of growth in middle class families in India, it is really, really good, and that depicts the purchasing power. So then, if we all see the growth of in the industry, so there's huge potential. Definitely, a lot of my batchmates have gone out to study and to do certain things. But I would still suggest there's a responsibility which lies with us, because if we don't do it, then again we'll be skipping the complete period of industrial evolution, I would say. And I would request everyone, whoever is listening, to at least explore certain opportunities in India, and should not be just driven by the salary and the job. There is more to that, because at the end of the day, 2 years down the line, even if you join a really, really good company, you will question yourself, what actually I want. And if you find the right purpose, I think the country needs that right now, because the best thing which anyone can do right now for the country is create jobs. This is at least what I feel. An engineer, there's a huge potential in terms of engineering opportunities in India.
And also, Nikhil, because Teachers' Day just went by, I can go on talking to. So tell me, how has been the contribution of your teachers, and who are some of the teachers that right, maybe perhaps from your school days to now, that
So,
have impacted?
unfortunately, we lost one of our school teacher like 3 years back. She was one of the most transparent and best teacher I have come across, Uma ma'am. And then during my quota days, I have so many teachers, but Akshay Chaudhary sir, he himself. So there are a lot of not. It's not just about the subject matters which you learn from them. Then, if you ask me, Saurabh sir definitely and Neil sir, they are like teachers to us, and there are so. And like, if you ask me what is something which I've learned, not just from teachers, so there is one person in Kanpur, and there's a shop called Bhatia. That there's a Bhatia Corporation or something. I don't remember. The person in that particular shop, it's a almost 100-year-old shop. The way he used to control his anger, because you always see 20-30 people standing in their shop and asking for certain things, but the way he articulates, but the way he greets, so that's itself is a learning. So I always want to meet him. He knows that I am very fond of him, because I always used to go and meet him, even if I don't have to buy anything, just to see how he actually learns. He treats people. So I think there are various people whom I would say that they have taught me a lot, and they are among the few.
So what was it about Uma ma'am that makes you remember her?
So if anything happens, like in the class, she was the only teacher who never used to skip the top rank holders. Everyone was beaten up altogether. It was not just the like the people who were not scoring good. It was actually everyone. So she was actually like just very clear in terms of principles. If you have done this wrong, no matter how much marks you get, you'll get the punishment. So, and the way she used to explain things, and she was a really, really good teacher. She was teaching us history. I was very fortunate to also be in one of the class where she was a class teacher, so like the main teacher of the class. So I think there are a lot of things she has taught us, and it's not always, I would say, the teachings which teaches you. It's also sometimes the practices which you see in them which teaches you a lot. So I think the observations we had for her, like she was very transparent, and she was very honest in terms of whatever things which uh, she never differentiated between two students in respect to the marks and other things. So I think that was one of the reasons.
So thank you so much, Nikhil, for being on Ek Samvaad. It was a great pleasure talking to you. We wish you a
Thank you so much.
wonderful journey onwards, and to all your teammates also. Harshit could not be here. Maybe we'll catch him some other day. And
Yeah, man.
all the very best on your journey onward. And thank you for the
Thank you.
great work you're doing for this country. It makes me particularly proud to see that not only did you choose to stay here, you're solving problems, you're serving people, and you're also inspiring others that, there's hope and you can do things on your own if you decide, if you choose to do that. So
Yes,
wonderful.
ma'am.
Very
Thank you so much,
proud.
ma'am. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Nikhil, for
Thank
being
you so
here.
much.
God bless you.
Thank you, ma'am.